whole, I mean, yeah, the Pfeffernusse in there and the,
I don't know if 9
Everything, like
all the Christmas cookies.
every Christmas cookie.
Yeah.
Doing any good.
Gingerbread.
What are those?
Mexican wedding cookies.
The December 4th, 2018 meeting of the City of Lawrence Redevelopment Commission is called to order. A quorum is present. Commissioner Blunt, Clifford Hicks, Sullivan, and non-voting member Commissioner Ricci. Next on the agenda is the approval of minutes from the November 8th, 2018 meeting. Commissioners have reviewed the minutes. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, is there a motion for approval?
Motion.
Commissioner Blunt. Second, please. Commissioner Hicks. All those in favor by show of hands. Unanimous. Thank you. Next on the agenda is the approval of claims and purchase orders. Today we have 2 vouchers for approval totaling $9,112.14. Mr. Starnes.
Yes. There's one, I think 2 items I want to call your attention to on the claims here. One is an adjustment relative to the pollution legal liability policy that under the remediation agreement with Meyer Plastics, the Redevelopment Commission is funding, which also provides coverage to the Redevelopment Commission as an additional insured. They're under, I think it was kind of, they had the wrong number in at closing, so there was an adjustment of $498.58 relative to that. And so that is on here, which is not a normal, not a claim we see each month. And the other would be the second voucher, the $265 payment to IHCDA. That's a repayment of an amount that had been drawn from the Hardest Hit Funds grant that funded the blight elimination program for surveying of a property that was then pulled out of the program because it was sold by the project partner to another company. So we have to repay that money to the IHCDA, which it's actually U.S. Treasury money, so it has to be accounted for, and it had already been drawn, I think, prior to current administration even, and so it was just a last thing as we work to close out that grant, a last amount that we have to repay.
Oh.
So those are the 2 sort of not normal things that you see on there that I wanted to call to your attention.
Questions?
This is the Meyer Plastic, this is the premium on that policy?
Yes.
And this is, you say, an adjustment to the amount of the premium? And have we seen in a prior claim the rest of the premium?
We have. And I don't recall which month that was off the top of my head, but we saw the rest of the claim come through in a prior.
About how much was that? You remember? The total?
The total is right at around $100,000. I think it was.
This is the premium.
That's the premium. It's a one-time premium for the 7-year term.
And what does U.S. Bank administer for us?
They're the trustee that handles
the Monarch bonds.
Monarch bonds. Sorry, I guess that's one that we don't see each month as well. So good point. We do have a administrative fee from U.S. Bank. That's what it's for.
I move the approval of both of these sets of.
Move for approval. Second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Blunt. All those in favor by show of hands. Staff report.
Thank you. First, I think the material update under number 1 there is that we now have a fully executed letter of intent, and we'll be working on the terms of a project agreement that I think we'll start discussing in detail among the commission members and myself as we put it together right after the first of the year, hopefully set it up for approval in, I would think maybe February if it gets to the point of the commission's satisfaction in that period of time. So that was the news. We did have the approval from the commission, made a couple of changes after the last meeting. Jerry executed on the commission's behalf, and we sent it to the target company and got an executed copy back just last week. So.
Have you circulated to members of the commission the executed letter of intent?
I have not. But I will.
Speaking only for myself, I'd like to see that.
Sure. Yeah, I will do so.
And then what is it you said we would expect to have approval on in February?
Well, so now having a signed letter of intent will work directly on the project agreement, sort of project development or economic development agreement with the company, between the Redevelopment Commission and the company, that will use the LOI as a baseline, but add some more detail. And I'll be working on that between now and on into the new year, and I think begin to have some discussions about specific terms and language with you all in January, hoping that we can maybe get to a point where the commission is comfortable approving it at its meeting in February. That would be the goal.
Just two last quick questions, if I may.
Please go ahead.
Remind me whether there were some time deadlines in the letter of intent that are triggered by the signature on the letter of intent as opposed to the definitive agreement, if any.
Yeah, I think the material one would be, there is a paragraph that says the parties will use best efforts to get to a project agreement in 60 days, unless extended by the agreement of the parties. So I think that fits in if we're able to begin talking about it through January and get it to a point where it's ready to be approved in February. We'll be compliant with that 60-day deadline, and it does touch off as well. The letter of intent speaks to a 6-month due diligence period, so to speak. I think but that's really just a guidepost.
The due diligence period is not triggered until the definitive agreement is signed. Is that right?
That's right.
So that period might well be subject to some further negotiation.
Yes, and so I'd say that's in the letter of intent. It's sort of a guidepost and may dictate how we put that project agreement together in terms of what that due diligence deadline is. But it wouldn't be triggered until that's executed.
And then my other question was, the Taft Law Firm is representing the commission in this negotiation. Is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
So that's the update there, and I think certainly more to come as we work on the project agreement. Second, 42nd and Post, area that we've talked about in prior meetings. I wanted to provide an update. I've spoken before about the current owner of the Mason Gardens apartment complex that's there on 42nd Street, and the adjacent property to that's long been kind of a problem property on the Lawrence side of that corridor, that area, which was formerly known as 42nd Place Studio Apartments, I believe. I believe initially, when they were first developed, been part of the Mason Gardens complex. It had then, prior to just a few months ago, a separate owner that had bought the property at a tax sale, just the studio, 42nd Place studio piece. It was in significant disrepair, something I had talked to with the folks at Cafe at length. It was something very much on their radar as a problem, and some various neighborhood groups. I think the positive news from that is the owner of Mason Gardens has now purchased and owns the 42nd Place Studio Apartments and is in the process of demolishing the structures, which I think it was pretty unanimous in terms of feedback from the meetings I attended with Cafe and neighborhood groups that's a desired outcome to have those structures demolished, and the current owner is working to rezone that property into a mixed-use designation, which, with the prospective advent of bus rapid transit on Post Road is something that we've been supportive of because we think it fits well in that neighborhood, in that corridor, and should trigger some positive private investment in that southern border area of Lawrence. And I think that news operates in conjunction with City of Indianapolis's focus on Oak Tree Apartments, which is just sort of diagonal across 42nd and across Post on the Indianapolis side, which is a much larger complex and has been a very significant problem in that area, in that neighborhood for a long time. And I think they've made some progress on potential acquisition from the current out-of-state owner there, have plans to raise those structures as well. So I think in terms of cooperation, that's been good, and I think we're seeing some positive movement on both sides of that political border that are good signs for the neighborhood and things that the residents are excited about. So wanted to share that because it's an area we've talked about, and I think it even thought about whether it would be necessary or advantageous for the Redevelopment Commission to acquire somehow 42nd Place Studio Apartments to accomplish the demolition. I think it's good news then that we've not had to do that. It's going to come down in private hands. And yeah, I think the current owners even made some contacts with other landowners around it to maybe have a bigger footprint for a future project. And so we'll stay tuned on that. But I think that would certainly be positive. There's a gas station on the corner and a commercial sort of strip center on Post Road around the corner from 42nd Place Studio Apartments that altogether I think could be a really impactful project if we were able to see that come to fruition. And maybe something that if it were going to happen, there might be some request made of the Redevelopment Commission. I don't know, but we'll certainly keep you updated regardless.
But, so he's going to, let's go back to the other, our corner.
Yeah.
He's going to rezone that to mixed use retail like C-store?
No, mixed use 2, which I think he has taken. I don't think C-store would fit under the new MU2. I'm not a entitlements guru by any stretch, but I don't know that he could do a C-store maybe, but if so, he's crossed it off the list, and now it's proceeding with some concessions and commitments with staff support into a rezoning hearing tomorrow at Metropolitan Development Commission downtown.
Okay, so it's staff.
So DMD staff
Gotcha.
supports the petition.
There's really no need for us to support that formally.
No, right.
Thank you.
Right. They had initially had some issues with it. I think we met with them, facilitated a meeting with the owner, prospective developer, about his vision for the area. I think what he would really like to accomplish is a positive food-related use. It's a food desert, and I think he sees potential grocery or some other kind of food access development as a benefit for not only his tenants but the area as a whole. So I think that's been certainly a topic of conversation with him as a priority initiative. So we hope to see that happen, certainly.
Thank you.
And then shifting around the corner to Shadeland Corridor, we've talked about that area before. This really just to set up the resolution that you see under new business. In further and ongoing discussions with the Service Master by Crossroads franchise, which had submitted a proposal that this commission had previously selected for acquisition and redevelopment of that former sheriff's garage, it's apparent that due to issues with fire suppression and some other structural matters, the project as proposed and as initially scoped would not be able to even get the necessary government approvals from the state or certificate of occupancy from the city or the DMD to be able to be feasible. So I think mutually have determined, at least from my standpoint, to recommend that the commission rescind that selection of the proposal pursuant to that RFP. I don't think that that project as set up there is feasible, and withdraw from that project agreement in hopes that maybe there's a different kind of project that we could be that would work, that we could work on in the future. And that sets up, I think there is a broader conversation to be had about the corridor as a whole, and maybe a new allocation area to make some positive investments in and along Shadeland Avenue corridor. I've contacted the counselor from that district and the council president to say I'd like to discuss with them what that might look like and what their level of support might be, and I hope to hear back from them and schedule that meeting in the near future about whether it would be something they see as advantageous to set up a new allocation area in that district, or get behind a planning effort to steer from a near to even a mid and long term basis the future of Shadeland as a kind of the western boundary of Lawrence and a corridor that I think has some potential. So I'll keep you updated as that conversation progresses. Again, hopefully. But that's kind of the update. At this point, I think there continues to be some interest in development of the property owned by the Kaido Trust that's there back off of Shadeland from a couple of multifamily developers. I think that probably makes some sense personally, but that probably is something that needs to be considered in a broader redevelopment planning context, honestly. So. That's really the update at this point.
What is Service Master by Crossroads' position on us rescinding the proposal? I assume they're in agreement.
Yeah, they are. I told them that I think under the terms of the RFP and their proposal, if that were not going to be feasible and lead to a project that other government entities could approve and issue a certificate to allow them to occupy under what we had anticipated, then the likely next step would be to pull it from that process as opposed to trying to. It's not a very flexible, not a very flexible thing. Having requested proposals, received one, selected it, and now trying to crunch it into a different kind of shape is not very feasible. So I think I talked to Keith Matthews, the owner of that franchise, about the next logical step is probably to rescind that selection and look to see if there's another way we can put it together down the road. And he was in agreement, yeah.
Well, refresh our memory, what was the sale price for the?
The sale price is $205,000, I believe.
Yeah, okay. Other questions from the commissioners? Bruce, good evening. Hearing none, may I have a motion to approve resolution number 8, 2018?
So moved.
So moved by Commissioner Hicks. Second? And so moved by David Blunt. And all those in favor by show of hands? Unanimous, thank you. And we could get everybody to sign that, I think, yeah.
Oh, Mary Jo. Bruce didn't sign those. Sorry.
Yeah, there you go.
It happens when you're late to the party.
Let's take a minute and finish the signings and then.
Y'all need to sign this one first so I can sign it.
Good. All right. If there is no other business to come before the commission, I just mentioned that the next commission meeting is scheduled for January the 22nd, 2019. And with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And a second, please.
Second.
Second by Wayne. All those in favor by show of hands. Thank you, gentlemen. Unanimous.